Hey there, welcome to a special edition of Beat the Odds and Happy Holidays, everybody. This is such a great time of year. It's also the College Bowl football season. Santa, not the only one handing out the gifts, by the way. Beat the Odds starts right now.
From our Las Vegas studios, this is Beat the Odds, sponsored by Superbook at the Westgate Las Vegas Resort and Casino, and powered by Sports Grid.
And welcome inside our Las Vegas studio. I'm Dave Hall.
And I'm Mariah Janos. Hopefully Santa dropped off some pretty cool stuff for you guys. Did you have a favorite Christmas present growing up?
Okay, before your time, but when I was like 8, I got the electric football game. Have you ever heard of that?
You've explained it to me before.
You put the players on, you plug it in, and then they just do this?
Yep.
I don't think I ever scored a touchdown on that game.
It clearly changed your life.
Maybe not in a good way. What about you?
You know, we got a cat one year, but that thing lasted like 4 years, unfortunately. So I think that's as good as it's going to get. Merry Christmas.
Took a dark turn.
Yep.
Coming up on today's show, Teddy and Jack have hung their stockings with care. Unless you want a lump of coal in yours, you should stick around and see what they have to say.
Plus, our friend Rick Saratella is hopping on to talk about those college players whose only Christmas wish is to get drafted this spring. And our merry elves from Sports Grid are here too.
Let's welcome in Vegas here and beat the odds. Joe Lisi and Donnie Wright are going to be talking some college football bowl action, which includes Miami and Iowa State out there in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Back to you in Vegas. Let's get after it.
Yeah, let's get after it, boys.
Yeah.
I'm afraid to ask, did you guys have a favorite gift growing up?
That vibrating football game is a fickle mistress.
It is.
Yeah, I put my tongue on it one time, shocked the you-know-what out of me. So do not do that.
Explains a lot, Teddy.
That's why it's gone.
I don't remember what I did last week, let alone 40 years ago, 50 years ago, whatever.
Fair enough. All right.
Well, the evolution of bowl games and bowl season, we're in the middle of it, has really taken a turn also. We don't get vibrating football. We're not getting the same type of blue bonnet bowl and those type of things.
I'm so mad at myself I brought it up.
We're now getting all of these things, these changes, including the expanded playoff this year. So many things to talk about, Teddy, as we get in this week.
But the thing I want to start with is controversy. All right, there's always controversy, and it doesn't matter. We're talking about it in March, we're talking about it in December. You can expand the playoffs from 4 teams to 12 teams, and guess what? There's still going to be people complaining about who didn't get in. In my mind,
More people.
Yeah. In my mind, Alabama out, SMU in. Right call. We'll talk about that more later in the show.
We can, you know what, though, we have to decide what we're upset about. The idea was never to have the best 12 teams play in this tournament. It was to try to give the teams that are not in the Power 4 and different things an opportunity. We could spend an hour on that, but there is an opportunity to make money, which is what we're going to try to do. But trying to get the best 12 teams, if we just admit they're not the best 12, that's fine, right? I mean, we're trying to make it more equitable down the road.
You guys are going to get into that later about whether or not the committee got the right 12 or not.
The bowl
stick
season,
around for that.
The bowl season's like ice cream. All right, you're not going to get nourished on it, but everybody wins. I mean, the bowls are a great thing, top to bottom. We're going to make some money during this period.
Excellent. As always, a great analogy by you, Jack.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about what's different between college betting and pro betting, because in my mind, that's certainly something that matters at this time of the year, and we do mostly pro shows. Let's talk a little about college right now. So what's different? Well, the markets adjust a lot faster in the pros than they do in college. People pay more attention. The spotlight shines brighter, which means that under the radar teams in college tend to stay under the radar. You can make money with them into December and January. When you look at the public bandwagon teams, there really haven't been a whole lot of them this year, but there's a big public bandwagon for the teams that have made everyone money, even as big as you see in the pro ranks. But remember, biggest difference perhaps of all, in pros, the lines are set to beat casual bettors. In college, the lines are set to beat the wise guys.
And all about motivation. I mean, we talk about this every year with the bowls, but some teams care, some don't. Transfer portal, opt-outs, all those things are real. Coaches moving on. You're able to take advantage of that. Sometimes it's about overreaction by the line movements based on that general information that everybody knows. So it's a tricky time of year, but you can definitely take advantage of it.
Even like when you're getting dressed, some people care and some don't.
Some don't.
All right, setting lines for these bowl games have kept Vegas on its toes, that's for sure. Mariah is at the Superbook Westgate Las Vegas with more.
Thanks, Dave. I'm here with our friend Jay Cornegay with the Superbook. All right, Jay, it is bowl season. A lot of moving parts with the transfer portal, players choosing to opt out. How has that impacted lines?
Yeah, well, it keeps us on our toes. We've figured this out over the last couple of years. Players are opting not to play. They don't want to get hurt and affect their draft status. And also, going and entering the portal. That's a big deal as well. And it also keeps us on our toes because it can have a huge impact on the line. So the sharp, educated players obviously keep an eye on that, and we do too. Sometimes they get it before we do. Sometimes we get that news before they do. But in the long run, we'll be fine.
And looking at the college football playoff, 12 teams now, more games to wager on. How has the handle been?
It's been tremendous. Usually during the holidays, football tends to subside a little bit. People have other things to do. But now we have these playoffs going on during the holidays, and the action in the first weekend was tremendous. We expect it to pick up and to really mirror what we see on the pro ranks.
And heading into the second round of the playoffs, is there any team that you have liability on?
There's one team that we certainly have a lot of liability on, and that is Boise. We're pretty comfortable with it because the other contenders, especially the top 2 seeds, we're looking at Georgia and Oregon. We're sitting pretty good on them, so I think we're in pretty good shape overall for the futures.
All right, Jay, thank you so much. Dave, I'll send it back to you in studio.
Thanks, you too. When it comes to betting these bowl games, look at 3 things: value, motivation, and do they look good in tight pants? Jack's going to explain that last one. That's next.
Beat the Odds is sponsored by Superbook Westgate Las Vegas and powered by Sports Grid.
It is my pleasure to welcome in Rick Saratella, pro football draft analyst. All right, Rick, with these bowl games and the college football playoff, this is the final opportunity for those declaring for the draft to really showcase what they can do in a game situation. So how much weight do these games actually carry when it comes to pro teams deciding who they want to select, especially in those early rounds of the draft?
Yeah, this is an exciting time, Mariah, because the bowl game season to me is officially draft season, especially for the pro teams that are eliminated from playoff contention. A lot of times the coaching staffs now turn their attention to the draft and start watching these bowl games to see which prospects are going to be coming out for the draft. And I'll tell you what, there's some really good games going on. Everybody wants to talk about the quarterbacks. How about December 28th? We got 2 big games on that day. Colorado taking on BYU. Coach Prime has said, hey, we're not packing up. We're coming out to play. And that means I expect big things from Shedeur Sanders. I expect big things from Travis Hunter, possibly the number 1 and number 2 overall picks in the draft playing in that game. And it'll be interesting to see because earlier that day, Miami will also be playing. And Cam Ward, who's also in contention for that number 1 overall pick between Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, will he play in that bowl game against Iowa State? Iowa State always brings a tough defense. You can get a glimpse at potentially 2 of those top signal callers on the same day.
You say, will he play? That's always the biggest question around those games for those players that maybe do decide to sit out. Does that impact their draft stock at all?
Well, I think, there's a exception to the rule. Like, for example, December 31st, New Year's Eve, we got Alabama versus Michigan. Michigan has 2 of the potential top 5 picks, defensive tackle Mason Graham, cornerback Will Johnson. I don't think either one of those guys is going to play, but I don't think it's going to impact their draft stock because their resume speaks for itself. They've laid down a body of work. Mason Graham, I think, could be arguably the number 1 overall pick. It's not far-fetched to believe that. And then Will Johnson, he's been struggling with this toe injury. We haven't seen him the second half of the season. Why come out, risk further injury in the bowl game? I think he has his focus on the next level.
Right. Now, how do you see this upcoming draft shaking out? You just mentioned 2 of the quarterbacks that are projected to go in the first round. But other than them, that's really it, as opposed to last year's draft class. So how do you see at least this early round going?
Yeah, that's the most asked question I get. How many quarterbacks are we going to see, Rick? And, last year we saw 6. It was unbelievable. We mentioned Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. I think those 2 are locks. Also, in the Sugar Bowl, on New Year's Day, I think we're going to see Carson Beck from Georgia. He's kind of had this roller coaster type of season. I still believe the scouting community views him as a first-round pick, so I think we'll see at least 3 quarterbacks in the upcoming draft. And I also want to throw out a sleeper to keep an eye on also in the Rose Bowl, Cameron Skattebo. If you've seen this guy play, he is a truck coming through the hole. Reminds me of Peyton Hillis Back in the day, just a big bruising between the tackles runner. If you're an old school fan of football like myself, you're going to love watching Cam Skattebo of Arizona State in that Rose Bowl.
All right, you just threw out a plethora of names for us to keep an eye on, Rick. Thank you so much, our pro football draft analyst. We enjoyed having you on.
My pleasure.
Great insight there from Rick. Now let's toss it over to Jack with some teams to keep an eye on this bowl season.
Yeah, so this segment going to be difficult to get through everything because there's so many different variables when we're talking about betting on these bowls. So a couple of different ways I start. I'm looking for motivation almost first and foremost. The other stuff is going to factor in. But who can we rely on consistency-wise? And when you talk about not using the portal or not having to deal with that, Clemson obviously is one of those teams that we've talked about before, didn't take anybody out of the portal before the season. And then the Armed Forces team. So we talk about Navy and Army, those type teams. Navy, you know exactly what you're going to get. These dudes are getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go defend our country and all that kind of stuff. They are not worried about portals and transfers and all those type of things. When you put them up against a team like Oklahoma, Jackson Arnold is now gone. He's in the portal. Their center's in the portal. Brent Venables getting a new offensive coordinator. I don't care what they say on campus in Norman, Oklahoma. This is not a team that cares about a bowl game. So you're getting some value with a pretty big number right now with Navy. Army, very similar in that you've got guys that are living their life. They're being all they can be. They're doing their best every single day when they wake up. And that's going to continue. Nothing's going to change. And this is a team early in the year covering numbers at will, getting it done. Consider who they're playing. They're playing Marshall, loses their coach. That's one of those things we don't talk enough about. When you lose your coach and you have an interim coach coming in kind of just watching things, you're a ship without a rudder. So I think this is a team definitely going to step back. They lose their linebacker as well. So look for them to struggle stopping that option. There's so many more things, Teddy, but those are just a couple to look at as we head into the bowl season.
Breathe, my friend.
Oh, my
breathe.
gosh, there's so much.
Yeah. So I want to talk about what's different between college in the regular season and college in the bowl season. Talent matters most in the regular season. Talented teams are going to outplay the others. That being said, Jack nailed it. Motivation is what matters most during bowl season. So we care a lot about the quotes we read. We care a lot about transfer portal news. Transfer portal news are going to tell you which teams care about their bowl and which ones don't, plain and simple. And we talk a lot about coaching changes. Pay attention to coordinator changes. Offensive and defensive game plans, when they're altered in a relatively short amount of span, a relatively short time frame, doesn't necessarily bode well for those teams. And we talk about bowl season in general. Look, value is real. The bad point spread teams during the regular season can be money makers during bowl season. In fact, the worst point spread teams at 25% ATS or worse, are significant money makers. Motivation we've talked about. Note the strengths of conferences. Conferences are doing well and poorly early in bowl season. And last but not least, rhythm offenses likely to be affected by a long layoff.
All right, a lot of information. Thanks, guys. You're just talking about value. That's exactly what the Sports Grid guys are talking about, too.
College football bowl season is finally here. Donnie Wright's out along with Joe Lisi. Got a lot of action-packed games that are going to be lining up on the board, Joe. I'm excited for bowl season. How about you?
Absolutely. This is what it's all about. Intensity and teams fighting to get a win at the end of the regular season, Donnie. Doesn't get better than this.
Perfect way to send off some of those seniors, Joe. We take a look at game number 1, Texas Tech and Arkansas. It's going to take place in the Liberty Bowl. Opening lines there, 58.5 is the total. Now we're seeing some of those lines shifting around, 60.5, 59.5, and now if we take a look at the side, -2.5s. There are 2.5s out there and also 3s. If we look at this game between Texas Tech and Arkansas, Joe, what gives?
Well, you're talking about a Texas Tech team under Joey McGuire that has won 2 straight bowl games, Donnie. Very explosive with their quarterback, Behren Morton, that has averaged 298 passing yards per game. On the ground, they've averaged well over 150 yards with their star running back, Taj Brooks. He's averaging well over 5.5 yards per carry. And on the flip side, you have Taylon Green, the Arkansas quarterback that is a dual threat, and Jaquindon Action Jackson. And this Arkansas offense that's averaging over 25 points per game should be a dynamic Liberty Bowl. We'll see how it plays out.
Let me ask you a couple questions, too, because we understand the players that are going to be playing they will be excited to play. Any issues with motivation, Joe, in the Liberty Bowl for you?
I don't think so, because Texas Tech has stepped up in back-to-back years, and for Arkansas and Sam Pittman, they're a 6-6 football team, but have played very well in the bowl season the past couple of years. This one could be points aplenty. Both teams trend to the over. Texas Tech does have one of the worst pass defenses in all of college football, allowing 305 passing yards per game.
We usually see a lot of special teams fun in these bowl games, so we'll certainly keep an eye out for that. How about the next game, Iowa State and Miami, the Pop-Tarts Bowl? Certainly not where Miami wanted to be after leading the ACC for so long during the season. Joe, let me ask you a question here. The question is motivation for Miami, always an issue in bowl games.
Especially when you lose 2 games at the end of the regular season to Georgia Tech and Syracuse. That lets you out in terms of the top 12 teams of the college football. So will Miami be motivated? You're talking about a team right now in Iowa State that is allowing 179 rushing yards per game. They gave up 245 rushing yards to Arizona State in the Big 12 championship. Could mean a big day for Mark Fletcher and Damian Martinez and that Miami offense that's averaging 179 yards on the ground.
You got some players that are looking to go pro for Miami, Joe, and starting there with Cam Ward, a guy that's going to be in that Heisman race. We'll see if he wins it. But outside of that, tell me a little bit about the motivation on the quarterback for playing that football game. One last ride with his teammates, or is it sayonara probably to the NFL?
I think for Cam Ward, he gives it his best performance. You don't want to go out losing at the end of the regular season. This is an opportunity to really show out and maybe attack an Iowa State secondary that really was exploited by Arizona State. So I think for Cam Ward and Miami, they step up in this bowl matchup.
Also, if you take a look, Joe, at Iowa State, any lingering effects from losing their championship game, or do you think they're going to be motivated for this one to give Miami their best effort?
I think they will. They played very well last year against Memphis, stepped up in that matchup, lost, but this is still a team in Rocco Beck that's young, they're inexperienced, and Matt Campbell will look to get this team experience heading into 2025. Rocco Beck completed 59% of his passes, does have a dynamic wide receiver tandem as well to throw the football to, and we've seen Miami play down to the level of competition all season long. This game could have points, Donnie.
Let's get another game in the Sun Bowl, Louisville versus Washington. Joe, the Sun Bowl, near and dear to your heart out there.
Best bowl game of the year. I would opt to go to the Sun Bowl each and every year. Fantastic landscape in Texas, El Paso. When you look at Louisville right now, they played very well and lost to Notre Dame by 7 points earlier in the year. Knocked off Clemson, blew them right out of the water in Death Valley. This is a Louisville offense that is explosive, led by former Texas Tech quarterback Tyler Shuck. And on the flip side for Washington, overexceeded expectations, 6-6 this year. But this was a team that knocked off Michigan at home in the regular season. Very good defensively. This should be a dynamic matchup.
As always, keep eyes there. Those 3 games just previewed, a lot's going to happen in the portal coming up here. Some players are going to leave, some players are going to stay. So always sometimes a tough handicap. We'll watch these play out, but 3 great football games to keep your attention. I'm Donnie Rightside, he's Joe Lisi, and now back to the guys in Vegas.
You're watching Beat the Odds, sponsored by Superbook at the Westgate Las Vegas Resort and Casino, and powered by Sports Grid.
All right, welcome back to Las Vegas. Do us a solid, scan that QR code. It is our website, beattheoddstv.com. Lots of great information can be found there. All right, so you'd think going from 4 teams to 12 teams, everything would be puppies and unicorns, but it seems like people are madder than ever, guys.
It doesn't matter. 4 teams, 12 teams, 64 teams, 68 teams.
Right.
Someone's still going to complain. But the committee got this one right. Let's be real. All right. Conference championship games should matter, and they have to matter. SMU deserve their bid. And their only losses all year. By 3 points to BYU, by 3 points to Clemson. Nothing to be ashamed of there. Alabama's a 3-loss team with a blowout. All right, on the wrong end with a game they didn't score a touchdown. And 3 losses is too many. In fact, if you're going to make an argument about which team should have gotten in that didn't, Miami's got a better case than Bama. Bama, no business. Bama, a 3-loss team in the mix. Sorry, guys. We'll see you next year.
I'm okay with the long-term success of having the teams get in based on the conference tournaments. What I'm not okay with is them not reseeding it after the teams get in. I mean, the fact that some of these teams have to go through really, really hard schedules, even though we know they're better. I mean, we should be re-ranking.
Oregon clearly has the hardest path.
And they're the number 1 team in the country. So that would be my only thing. I'm okay with them not having it be a conference, big conference tournament and getting all the teams from there. And so I'm okay with some of these worst teams teams having a shot for recruiting, it matters. But I am very adamant they need to start reseeding after the 12 teams get in to benefit the teams that are going to be better, at least in theory.
One of the things I keep hearing is like, oh, playing at Boise would be such an easier path. Boise had Oregon beat.
Yeah, nothing is
take
easy.
Away a couple kick returns, Boise wins that game.
And we're not so arrogant to think that we know who's going to win these games. But when you're going in beforehand, you rank them up front. I mean, and then once they're in, you say, okay, now here's what they do it in basketball. Why aren't we doing it in football?
Right. I'm getting the hard rap, guys.
Seeding schmeeding is all I'm going to say. It doesn't matter. You got to beat the teams in front of you. No one has an easy path to a title.
Best bets are next. All right, welcome back. So some of these bowl games sponsored by mayonnaise, potatoes, Pop-Tarts, lawnmowers. Now, Beat the Odds, we were hoping to also sponsor a bowl game, but we spent the entire budget on Teddy's hair gel and Jack's shoes.
So that means our entire budget was roughly $20, which checks out.
We're going to play it in the parking lot, no snacks provided.
Exactly, just local,
show up
keeping
and
it
play. That's right.
homegrown. I like it. Yeah. Teddy, start us off with your best bet.
Sure, let's talk about the Pop-Tarts Bowl in Orlando. Yeah, exactly, Pop-Tarts. Right now, this game's priced near pick'em, total in the mid-50s. Which team's going to get a stop in this game? My vote? Neither one. Iowa State defense, when they faced a good offense this year, they've gotten torched. We saw it against, Arizona State, Kansas, UCF, over in those games. Miami's D struggled all year. Plus, they could very well have opt-outs. And Cam Ward, what did they score? 36 points 11 times in 12 games. The only one they didn't, they turned the ball over 6 times and still scored 28 over in the Pop-Tart Bowl.
Yeah, I love that one. Actually, SportsGrid had a bunch of good information, too. So, yeah, a lot of good plays going out, I think. I'm going to hopefully give you one that we're not going to see coming. I do not think Colorado, we're getting the true story with how much their stars are going to play. I don't trust what Deion's saying. I think if the game gets out of hand one way or the other, they're going to be sitting. Let's go with BYU plus the points against Colorado.
Yeah, BYU, one of those sneaky good teams this year that beat a lot of good teams out there.
Way overperformed. They were only supposed to win 4 games this year. Flew over that in the first 5.
Mariah, give us your New Year's resolution.
My New Year's resolution is
Put her on the spot.
Spend less money. That's always a good one.
That's never going to happen.
No, it's not, but we'll try.